start to put tension on my string drawback, I was like, okay, I'm gonna swing.
It's him. You can look at the horns when he's dead. I'm in the zone. Let the arrow go is perfect.
When they lose their front shoulders, yeah, you start. Yeah, that's how you know.
Went about 5-10 more yards. He probably went 20 yards. Stepped over, tried to get back up. And I saw him fall over.
We rushed 40 years rods that night. We got like 156 and something like that. And then the next day we came out to 163 even.
You're listening to the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bringing you to the table where we talk about the outdoors.
What's going on, guys? Another installment of the White Cat Outdoors podcast, and deer season's over. We wrapped.
No, deer season is never over.
Rifle season is over. We got a little bit of a lag between rifle and muzzleloader or late season archery in Pennsylvania, so we got a little bit of time between now and then, and
2-ish weeks, I think.
Yeah, about 2 weeks, and we might touch a little bit on that, like a wrap-up of our season at the end of this episode. But the main body of this episode...
We actually have a few deer camp series that are going to get released after this one. So,
and probably a few more that are up and coming.
There's more
haven't
coming.
even been shot yet.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I know I'm going to kill a big buck.
So I'm running out of time to get 3 down.
Yeah, you are. You need to get after that.
Yeah.
But... Anyway, what we're going to talk about tonight, if you guys pay attention to our Instagram, a couple weeks ago, I had an encounter with a deer that was injured, and I took a video of it, called the Game Commission, got it handled, and Nick posted a video on our Instagram of it, and it just recently...
started gaining some traction.
Yeah, it got a lot of traction on Instagram, and a lot of people have seen it and are commenting on it, saying different things.
People are finally starting to leave it in the comments.
Yeah, for once in their lives, they're leaving it in the comments. We've been begging for it for years now, and they're finally doing it. So, Tom, your work has paid off.
Maybe you can get a bonus this year.
Yeah,
hopefully.
We'll give you a little bonus for the
Christmas bonus.
People leaving it in the comments. But since it gained some traction and people are noticing it, and people have differing opinions on it and have some different things to say, we want to kind of break down exactly what happened and how we handled it and the legality of things in Pennsylvania, because it's different everywhere. So I think that's where a lot of people's differing opinions come from, is that
they don't know
their
the local
state
laws.
Handles it differently than our state does, than another state does. So
and that short clip only shows a small interaction, and I think it's tough to... So an outsider, it's very tough for somebody to form a fully educated opinion on a 40-second clip that was, probably over an hour interaction that from the time you saw it to the time, Game Commission was involved and everything.
Yeah.
So we wanted to better explain what happened and try and give people that are interested a full story on this encounter.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we'll just start from the beginning, how I happened upon this deer. We were between, and this is an important part of the story, we were between archery and rifle season. In PA we have, is it a week?
This year was a week, yeah.
Yeah, a week gap between archery and rifle season. And I had some cameras out, so I was going out to check those cameras, and I had my dog with me, so we're out walking in the woods, and I'm looking at this one camera, and she starts barking and growling. I'm like, what the hell is she doing? And I tell her to be quiet, and I call her over, and she's just standing there growling. And I look around the tree that I'm standing at, and I just see antlers over, in the creek. I was like, oh, shit, there's...
About how far?
When I first put eyes on it, it was probably 30, 40 yards, probably closer to 40 yards. And at first, I thought it was just standing there, and I was like, that's weird that it's not leaving, because the dog's growling and stuff, and I'm right here. But sometimes because it was in a bunch of red brush, so sometimes if they feel safe, they'll just stand there and watch you. It doesn't bother them that you're there because they feel safe. But with the dog there, I was like, okay, that probably isn't what's going on. So I was watching it kind of from afar, 30, 40 yards, and just trying to figure out what was going on with it. Like, why was it standing there?
Yeah.
And the way it was standing, it kind of had its head like pushed into some red brush and vines. And I was like, well, maybe something's going on with all that. So I moved a little bit closer and observed it some more, and it wasn't moving or even like turning its head towards me as I moved closer. So I was like, well, maybe he's stuck, because like you see videos of people letting deer out of fences, or their antlers are tangled up and they just get stuck sometimes. So I was like, it doesn't seem very likely, but it's a possibility. So
I mean, from the information you have at this time, you're just making a guess.
Yeah, and the first part of that video that you posted, it was the video that I took. I had thought that. I was watching it, and as I walked up to it, it looked more like it was stuck because its head was all tangled up into the red brush and stuff. So I say in the video that it looks like he's stuck, and I was going to try to cut the red brush and free him up and let him out so he can go about his day. And so I get over to him, and I approach slowly. From the time I first saw him to the time I actually made it over to him, I had watched him for probably 15 minutes, just assessing the situation, making sure that I was being as safe as I possibly could approaching this animal.
Yeah, given the circumstances.
Yeah. So I get over to him to start cutting some red brush to let him out, and as I pull my saw up to like cut a piece of red brush, and I like grabbed his antlers to make sure I could keep him away from me and keep him steady as I cut stuff. And when I grabbed his antlers, he kind of he didn't really resist me at all, but when I grabbed him, he moved and was free of the red brush. I was like, that's weird. Like, so he's not stuck at all. His head came right out. So I was like, okay, there's obviously something else going on with this deer, and I kind of took a step back from him, and he just was standing there. And as I looked closer at him, I could see he had some pus coming out of his skull. So I was like, okay, he's definitely
something
injured.
ain't going on right for him.
Yeah, exactly. He's injured in some way. And I looked at him a little bit more, and I saw he had a wound in his side, and I don't know if it was an arrow that went in him. I didn't investigate further after.
Yeah, it could have been a gore from a fight.
Yeah, it could have been an antler, an arrow,
a stick. All you knew is that there was an injury.
Yeah, he had a hole in his abdomen. So I was putting all that together. I said, okay, this deer is obviously mortally injured in some way with his head wound and his stomach wound. He's not gonna make it. Like, he's just standing. I'm standing right there in the video. You can see I grab his antlers and kind of move
Which
him.
We should preface, like, we don't recommend doing that.
Yeah.
But Frank took a lot of time to assess the situation, and
I didn't just run over and grab him.
Yeah, you proceeded with extreme caution.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's important for this.
Yeah. So after assessing everything that I saw, I called the game commission, and you don't like call an officer unless you have like a game officer's business card with you. But I didn't have one, so I just called the game commission's number.
They have like an office, basically.
Yeah, it's just like the game office for your area. So Northwest PA has an office that you call, and then they basically get a hold of an officer, and then the officer will call you. Mm-hmm. So I do that. And
now, why did you do that? Now, obviously, I know, but explain why you did this.
So in Pennsylvania, and they just did. It's probably been longer ago than I think now, but I want to say it was probably like 6-7 years ago. They made it a felony to poach big game. If you are caught poaching
regardless of the circumstance.
Yeah, if you're caught poaching a big game animal or illegally taking a big game animal, it's a felony. So that's how it is in Pennsylvania, and I didn't feel like catching a felony for putting this deer down, so I called the game commission because I obviously didn't want to see this animal stand there and suffer until it finally died or got eaten by coyotes or whatever. So got a hold of the game commission. They dispatched an officer. He gave me a call, said that he wasn't far away. So
it was pretty prompt that you had an officer there.
By the time I called the game commission, I want to say it was about 25 minutes before
That's really
the
not
officer
bad.
showed. No, I thought it was...
Especially you're back in the woods. Like, you're not,
Well, and when I first called the main office, they gave me coordinates and stuff, and I asked the lady, I said, do you want me to stay here with the animal and keep an, so we can know where the animal is so we can take care of this, or should I meet the officer? And she said, well, just stay with the animal and the officer's going to give you a call. So he calls me and he says, well, I have your coordinates, but if you want to meet me at the road and we'll walk back into it. So I was like, all right. So by the time I walked back out to the road, which was not very far, it was maybe a 10-minute walk, he was a couple minutes behind me. So he pulls in and we take a walk back, and I'm just talking to him, just small talk stuff as we go back to it, and asking about like this, because a lot of times people hit deer with their cars and the deer's still alive, or my situation, people find animals that are obviously not doing well and should be dispatched. They're
Put
injured,
down or whatever.
They need to be put down. And I was asking about the legality of that, and he said, if you are not legally hunting an animal, like you have a tag, it's in season, you are 100% legal to shoot the animal. You cannot shoot. That is, you can
Straight from the warden.
Yeah, you can be charged if you are not 100% legally hunting this animal. So even if it were in season, and
You'd have to have a buck tag.
Yeah, I'd have to have a buck tag, or if it got hit by a car, it's on the road. You aren't allowed to shoot a deer on the road. So
yeah, and if it was at night, you can't shoot at night. So there's a lot of things that play into this.
Yeah, so if you are not legally taking this animal to put a tag on it and take the meat, you're doing everything legal, you are not allowed to kill the animal. So that's straight from the PA Game Commission, that's what you have, how you have to handle that situation legally. So we get back to it, he assesses the situation and comes up to the same conclusion that I did. The animal needs put down, and that's what he did, and cut the horns off and went about his day.
Did he explain why he takes the antlers? Because he didn't cut like a skull cap or anything.
No, he just took the antlers off, and he didn't really explain why, and I'm guessing is because people just want antlers.
Mm-hmm.
If people find a dead
which
deer
is
in the
also
woods,
illegal.
Yeah, you're not allowed to take,
unless you tag it.
Yeah, if you have a dead head or something, you have to have tagged that animal. So I'm guessing that's why he did it, just because that's what people are after. They want antlers. If they find a dead deer, they're going to cut the head off. Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't have antlers, no one's going to cut the head off a deer. So
Gotcha. Another thing that was brought up quite frequently was concerns of like CWD and EHD and blue tongue, those sort of things. Based on what you observed and the game warden and stuff, like what I guess how would you go about explaining that to somebody? Because from what you guys saw, it wasn't that the case.
No, and especially like in our area, we don't have problems with that sort of stuff with EHD or CWD or anything like that. There are places in Pennsylvania that it is a pretty serious problem, and there's a lot of places around the country that it's a very serious problem, but around Northwest PA, it's not. I don't think we have any documented cases of CWD or anything, you know. So given the circumstances with it being not a problem in the area, seeing that the animal was wounded in its abdomen and its skull was messed up, all factors considered, the warden was not at all worried that it was one of those diseases. It was just one of those things. The animal was wounded in one way or another, and wasn't concerned about the diseases that could have been.
Yeah, and it was obvious that the deer was not going to recover from whatever injuries it had endured.
Exactly.
So
yeah, if a deer's letting you walk up to it and handle it the way I was doing with this animal, it's not in good shape. It's not doing well. And even like when I walked away and I went out and met him up at the road, when we got back to the deer, it had walked back over to that red brush and laid its head back in it, because I think it was just sick of holding its head up. It was trying to rest a little bit, and anything it could do to take some weight off of it, he was going to do it.
And obviously, his mind's not working 100%. You know, no deer is going to just stand there like that, under normal circumstances.
Exactly.
No, it's. I think that was honestly like the very small amount of negative comments we got. I feel like was just people not understanding or aware of the laws in this area.
Mm-hmm.
I get that every state has its own laws, but that's why it's important for you to read up on the laws in your state.
Or if you travel to another state, because we had a guy comment on the video that was from Alberta and said that up there, they will not dispatch an animal unless they think it has a disease.
Yeah.
If it's clearly a wounded animal, like that one was, that had a hole in its side and a hole in its head, they will not dispatch the animal. He said they just let nature take its course and let it be what it is.
Which, that's a tough pill to swallow, but also you have to understand that they are wild animals. It's nature, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
I personally, the way my moral compass works, I would prefer to see it dispatched.
Yeah, you don't want to see it stand there and
no, not at all.
Wait to die, or however it may die. So.
Yeah. No, like I said, coyotes are a big thing in this area, and the chances of coyotes finding him before he does actually die are pretty good, really.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's just, you hate to even consider those sort of scenarios, so it's a good thing you found him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was able to get the situation handled before he had to suffer any more than he already did.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's really, it's just you're the first person I've talked to that's really ran into a situation like this. I've seen a few videos we actually had one of the guys that saw the video reached out to us, and he had a similar case of this last year, and same thing, had it dispatched and everything.
Yeah.
So it's just, I guess the biggest thing is people need to understand what the laws are in their area.
Yeah,
and it's not worth, even though you feel like you should be able to shoot it.
And in the way I personally feel, like, I hated standing there watching that deer stand there like that. Like, it sucks. I didn't want to stand there and see that, but I understand that it's not my job, per se, as the law goes, to take care of the situation.
It's not worth the felony charge.
Yeah, exactly.
You enjoy hunting as much as you do. A felony screws up your hunting for
forever,
life, really.
Forever.
You might be able to bow hunt, but a felony, it might take your license away for 5 years, but you can't own a gun after that with a felony on your record.
And so you're never gun hunting again.
Yeah. In a perfect world, and everybody had, perfect judgment, you wouldn't need a law like that in place. But somebody in the comments brought up a really good point that if you were able to dispatch it yourself, it opens the floodgates for poachers, because once the animal's dead, it's very difficult to prove the state it was in before you shot it.
Yeah, any poacher could go out and shoot an animal and be like, oh, well, it was acting real weird. I walked up to it and blah, blah, blah. Well, you didn't have anyone there to witness that. It's just your word against nothing. So
yeah, and that's why the law is in place, is because not everybody has the same judgment. And some people, there's certain wounds that a deer will recover from.
Yeah,
and it doesn't give you the right to dispatch it at your own discretion.
Yeah.
So I do believe that the law is good the way it is.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's still difficult for somebody like you that walks up on it and has to wait even an extra 20 minutes.
Yeah, it sucks that you have to wait that extra time, but at least it's about to get handled. It's not, you're not leaving it there to.
And the deer didn't, you would know better, but it didn't seem like it was in any true physical agonizing pain.
No,
it was more like a mental thing where it just didn't have any sort of sense of reality of what it was.
Yeah, it was
what was going on.
Septic shock or something, or just its brain was messed up. It wasn't distressed, in my opinion. It wasn't acting like there was a part of its body that was hurting it. It was just out of it.
Because you could see it did move a little bit in the video, and it wasn't trying to think, it wasn't nursing
a
any.
Shot deer hunches up, and you can clearly tell if a deer gets shot in the guts. Where this one did have a wound that looked like it had disturbed its intestines and stomach and stuff, but it wasn't hunched up like that was the source of pain and why it was acting that way. So, and it may have acted that way when the injury first happened, but at this point, it was so far progressed that it was just
Yeah. And obviously anything like this we're speculating on, but to me, my guess is that the skull injury happened first with fighting or something, and then the buck being vulnerable was allowed the second wound, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't think that to me that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
But like I said,
whether
we're
it
all
was
speculating.
shot second or if it was
gored.
a fight. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's incredible what those animals can endure and still be alive.
Yeah.
It didn't look like the deer did not look malnourished, so it didn't look like it had been suffering long.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, and archery had only been out for I think like 4 days at that point.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was a week's old injury. It was, he wasn't doing well after a couple days, so he was not going to make it.
No, and it was very clear. A wild animal just standing there totally vulnerable like that can't survive like that. So like I said, it's a blessing that you did find him when you did.
Yeah, no doubt.
And it gave us a little bit of I learned a lot from just you having the experience and stuff of like how to handle that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Because I knew it was illegal to dispatch and stuff, but I didn't realize how quickly they can respond. Because like that was always something that made me nervous about it. Is like I thought it was like a hotline that you call and then could be hours or something. Like it was
the next day they might come check it out.
Yeah, like I thought it was really cool how responsive they were and how quickly they handled it and treated it almost like as an emergency, really.
Yeah, he really did. The guy was awesome.
If you think about it and say, there's a medical emergency at your house, in this area, 20 minutes from the time you call is
fast.
That's damn good.
Yeah.
So it was really, really good to see how quickly the Game Commission is responding to calls like that.
Yeah, and he was super professional and a great guy to talk to. Like when I first called the office, they said just wait for a phone call, and I was like, okay, how long is this going to take? And it was not even 5 minutes after I hung up the phone with them.
Long enough for them to call him and explain.
The officer called me and said, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. He was in the middle of something else, and he said, but I will get to you as soon as I possibly can. Like, I'm wrapping this up, and I'll be to you. And I said, okay, sounds good. Like, this is where I am, blah, blah, blah. And he called me again and said, okay, I'm on my way to you a couple minutes later. And then he called me as he was pulling up just to make sure that he was coming to the right spot. So he called me 3 times in 25 minutes just to make sure I knew that he was...
Yeah, that's really good to hear.
Yeah, it was I had a phenomenal experience with it. He was a great guy, and I was very, very happy with the whole situation, how he handled it, and how the PA Game Commission as a whole worked.
Yeah, that's really our first encounter with really, like, besides getting your license checked on the side of the road. That's really the only experience you've had with them. So it was neat to see how responsive and professional they handle it.
Absolutely.
So props to our Game Commission in this area.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, we can't speak for all around the country and stuff, but in this area, it seems like they're doing the right. They're doing the good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Frank, I appreciate you jumping on and fully explaining that video, because like it's tough to get the full story from a 40-second clip.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why there's so many different comments and different opinions on the video that is on Instagram, because what took me an hour and a half to deal with, you're getting in 40 seconds.
Yeah.
And you're not even getting the full story. That's just the very beginning of the story with me seeing this animal.
Yeah.
So it was. I'm glad that it gained the traction that it did on social media, so that people saw it, because it's definitely a teachable experience.
Exactly, and that's what I'm happy about is that we had a very teachable moment happen, and it's reaching a lot of people, which I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, so hopefully a lot of people that are seeing the video listen to this podcast and then get the full scope of everything and understand this is, it was handled as the best way it possibly could have been.
It was textbook, really.
Yeah.
How it went through, which is what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I hate to see him like that, but it's good to see it handled the way it was.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess before we sign off here, I just want to thank everybody and show my appreciation for sharing that video and getting it out to everybody to teach people and get them more aware.
And most of all, thanks for leaving it in the comments.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. That's huge.
Yeah, Tom's been on that for a while.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're new here, welcome aboard. We hope you stick around for a few episodes, and you guys all know what to do. Get outside.